This is Top Shop Podcast.
Shop Podcast.
Top Shop Podcast.
Podcast for automotive service business owners by Paul Donahue.
So, hey, podcast listeners. So, we got Steve Corridori here. He's an ASE Master Certified Technician, owns a 6-star Automotive in Sandpoint, Idaho. So, I'm just below you in Utah. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm looking at the mountain range right out my window there. So, I was reading the About Us on your website, Steve. And I really love this part where you put, Steve's been a natural tinkerer since his youth, always curious about inner workings of mechanical devices in the cars. Steve was born and raised in Sacramento, California, but don't hold that against him.
Yeah, people appear to not like people
this
from
guy
California.
voted for Trump. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, this guy's got a brain in his head. So, but hey, Steve served in the Army, so I want to thank you for serving in Afghanistan and serving our country. I really want to I appreciate that very much. My father was in the Navy in World War II, and and along with a couple of his brothers. So you had met your wife while in Washington when you were in the service, and then moved to Sandpoint to raise a couple of beautiful daughters. Your hobbies, mine skiing and mountain biking, outdoors, woodworking, hiking, and ballroom dancing. So that's
Yeah, so
I
I
haven't
put a little,
spoken to an auto
yeah.
repair shop owner that ballroom
Yeah.
dancing was on there.
So there's like a little Easter egg thing in every one of my guys. It's kind of like for customers who actually go deep enough to reading the About Us, I don't actually ballroom dance, but it's trying to come up with something that's funny and slightly embarrassing. Like Dan says, long walks on the beach, and like it's just it's a funny kind of thing that I just chucked in there for people who would actually read the About Us page.
Right, yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, how did you get here? So you obviously it said there in your bio on your website that you were tinkering with cars when you were young. So I assume that you. So give me a little history. Tell me about it. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so I have always taken things apart since I was a kid. Any toy I had, any electrical device or anything like that, I would, rather than play with it, I'd usually break it and take it apart.
Right.
And I've never been satisfied with just the fact that things work. I always have to understand why and how. Like watching one of the things that I even wrote in my book to my daughters that I explained about kind of why I do what I do is I remember looking out the window and watching cars drive by and looking at the wheels and going, how do the wheels turn and not fall off of the car? Like it doesn't make sense to me how they could be connected but moving at a different rate. Even as a young child, I couldn't grasp how that was possible, and so I had to understand and I had to learn. And when I was in junior high school, I had a friend who was really into cars. And I was never, I mean, like my dad worked at a Pep Boys and, there
Okay.
was, but it wasn't much. I mean, maybe a few years, and he would kind of show me some things under the hood of the car. So I thought he knew everything. Come to realize it was just like a short-time job that he had. It wasn't something that he really knew about. I wasn't the kind of guy who was under the hood of the car with my dad for a long time or really doing anything. Again, it was the technical curiosity of what is all this stuff and how does it work? So that's really the biggest thing for me. And then I had a friend in junior high who got me into auto shop, and he would do model cars all the time. And it was just fascinating to me how he could build the model car without the instructions. He just knew what to do because it all made sense, right?
Right.
So, and
I can't do
yeah.
that.
Well, and that kind of fascinated me, to have that detailed understanding to be able to just do that. So I wanted to be in with them, and I wanted to understand these things, and I wanted to learn more. So I took auto shop and I took wood shop, and I kind of decided one of those two things through junior high and high school was going to be what I did. And wood shop turned more into a hobby, and the automotive kind of just turned into just what I wanted to do. My mom went to a Jiffy Lube to get her oil changed once when I was a freshman or a sophomore in high school. And I just kept going back there until they gave me a job because I just really wanted to be in that industry. After being in auto shop and learning about it, and realizing that there's so much that I could learn, that I just wanted to be involved. And I just started washing windows and cleaning toilets and floors and vacuuming cars for a while before they would let me even touch anything. So I mean, I've always loved this stuff. Love it. I love helping people, and I love figuring things out and fixing them.
So you're one of those shop owners that really literally have went from the bottom up. You were mopping floors and cleaning the restrooms, all the way to the shop owners. So congratulations. It's quite a journey that you made. What motivated you to actually, to try to buy a shop? Because I mean, a lot of people get into automotive repair, and then they get you're an ASE matcher certified, so very in demand. You can go and get a very nice salary at pretty much any shop you want. But it takes a special individual to go from technician to an owner, because it's completely different things. Running a business.
It's not even close to the same, I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it isn't, you're not even in the same solar system. Like
Right.
I didn't understand that at first, but I went into it knowing I didn't know anything, so I was willing to learn. I got to a point in the process. I'll get to why in just a second, but I got to a point in the process where I had to come to the determination that there was nothing that was going to stop me. Like I actually had to sit there and say that a couple of times, because I mean, if you haven't owned a shop, or if you have, you understand that the very beginning process is impossible. I mean, there's a barrier to entry there that seems like it's designed to be there. I mean, coming up with business plans and your future projections when you don't even know what the numbers should be, and you're supposed to come up with 2 years of numbers just out of the blue. And I didn't have AI when I did all this, so I had to just
Right.
figure it all out. It wasn't like I could just plug it into GPT and just, oh, here you go. I
Right.
had to make all the spreadsheets, and I had to write all of the business plan and the corporate binder, like all that stuff, every single thing. I just had checklists, and I was working every night after work until I couldn't anymore, until I got the giant checklist taken care of. But so what started the whole process was, when I was in the military, and I knew rather early on that it wasn't something I was going to. I mean, my initial intent was to stay in the military and to be, Sergeant Major Corridori. That was my intent. And realizing the bureaucracy of all of it just put such a bad taste in my mouth. Like I sacrificed a lot to be part of that, and it was just, I'm not saying it just wasn't for me as my personality type. I didn't like doing things just to do things. I wanted to understand why, and I wanted to have a say in how we did stuff. And that's not really how the military works. And fair enough. You know what I mean? Um, and so some of my friends were like, you need to get out. I mean, do your thing, do your time, but you really should get out, and you could probably do a heck of a lot more in the civilian side, helping more people than you could doing this with us. And after Afghanistan, and you're driving around in the middle of the desert, potentially getting blown up every day. And it's like, if I have these skills and this ability, I don't want to be using them or not using them.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I got out, and I got in with an independent shop that gave me a chance. And most of the independent shops in the area that I grew up in just simply weren't willing to give me a chance without the experience. And that's where, just everybody has this point where they have to jump from no experience to I have 10 years of experience. Like, where does that come from? You have to get it. You know what I mean? You have to gain it. Someone has to give you a chance, so and I was lucky enough for a guy. It was a shop called Made in America, Made in Japan in Sacramento. And my mentor was he was a hard ass, but he was a good guy. He was a really good guy. So he helped me be, there was no sacrifice. I mean, there was no compromise, is a better word, to the excellence that he expected. And I liked that, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be as good as I could possibly be without any excuses. So after becoming more politically open, and understanding living there. It, I went to, I didn't like not having my rifle. I mean, I had a rifle with me all the time for 4 years,
Right.
and I can't. It was odd not having one. So I went to go and buy one in California, and I couldn't, and
Wow.
it was infuriating to me. So I became very politically active, and that's really kind of what brought me here. I went to rallies, I wrote Congress people, I went to the Capitol, and it was a losing battle. There's no way to win that there. So I figured at that point, that was more important to me than living there and staying in that job. So my wife and I sold everything that we had. And like I'm an ASE master tech with at that point, you know, 5+ years of experience.
Mhm.
I was doing pretty well, almost 8 years of experience. But I just didn't want to be in California. And I'm like, at this point, I can work wherever I want. So we just got in a car and drove, and we ended up in Idaho. Didn't even know where Idaho was, but I ended up here, and the plan was to be in Coeur d'Alene. That didn't work out. We ended up finding a place in Sandpoint, and this place is. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Land Before Time. At the very end of the movie, The Land Before Time, they go into what they call the Great Valley. That kind of that Eden, and
Yeah.
that's I mean, saying this on a podcast is kind of silly because I don't want everybody to know about it. But this place is unbelievable. I'll never leave. Never.
And,
I'll die here.
and I no, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
I haven't been there yet. So I was in Florida for 33 years, and then my best friend kept saying, "Hey, you got to come out and go skiing." And he said that for I don't know 6, 7 years, and finally I went out and went skiing. And then I grabbed him and said, "Why didn't you tell me to come out and go skiing?" Because I went home, packed everything, and moved to the mountains, and
Yeah.
lived there for 10 years. And then we went to buy a home, a larger home, and in Summit County, Colorado, they're tad pricey. So we ended up moving here to Pleasant View, Utah. Yes, there is a town in Utah called Pleasant View, and I have a Pleasant View
Very pleasant view.
Almonds Peak right out that window right there. So yeah. So and I am in Mayberry RFD, and that's the way Idaho and Nebraska and a lot of these states are. So I don't blame you for leaving California. I don't even want to visit there. So
Yeah, no, that's yeah. So yeah, so I moved to Idaho, and I found a shop that kind of resembled as close to the shop that I worked at before. It was the only one in this area that had a web presence. It was the only one that really seemed serious about about being the top shop. And there's a lot of that old school North Idaho. There was. It's not as much anymore, but where they don't have any ACs, they don't have any long warranties, they don't use the best parts, they don't hire the best techs. It's just kind of we do what we do because that's what we do, and we don't really care. So I wanted to in all reality, it's the big fish in the little pond kind of situation. When I moved here, it was so easy for me to just
oh wow. Yeah.
explode this area.
Okay.
So yeah, I worked here as a technician for, uh, geez, I talked to the owner about my intention of buying the shop. One of the things as an owner is you always want to be looking at your exit strategy.
Sure.
They always talk about that. So I knew that, and I talked to the owner when I was even first interviewing and told them that I would like to buy the place eventually, whatever that looks like. I didn't know. I was 28 when I moved here.
Right.
So, um, yeah, and in 2017, I hurt my back, like so many technicians do. I had an
Mhm.
L5S1 rupture.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so it was rather miserable for quite a while. And I think with me specifically, it's more genetic. My mother had issues with her back. My grandmother had issues with her back. My dad, they all have L5, L4, L5, L5S1 problems. So it seemed like an inevitability. Unfortunately, with what I love doing, that's such a problem. And then if you don't have uh, the posture necessary to really be mindful of how you do things, you'll end up with a problem. So I didn't want to have back surgery. Obviously, who does? So for about 5 years, I dealt with it. I just, took pain medicine and did a lot of exercises and stretching. And it got to the point where it wasn't feasible anymore for me to be working out in the shop. And I had so much knowledge and so much passion for the job that I didn't want to just change careers. So I talked to the owner about like, hey, I need to get out of the shop. I need to be a service advisor or something. Like I can transition into more of a different uh, role. And he said, well, you said you wanted to buy the shop, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, then why don't we just do it?
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah. So at that point, he had kind of backed off and he didn't really have the passion he wanted before. He had issues relationally, and there was all kinds of stuff that ended up happening,
Sure.
but he just didn't want to do it anymore. And I basically just bought him out. I mean, I was fortunate enough to, he didn't want to make a ton of profit. He just wanted out. So, it gave me the opportunity to get in at a reasonable price. And I mean, there was a fair amount of work that had to be done. I mean, the business was not turnkey by any means. I mean, I was doing 60% of all of the work in the shop as the technician, as the lead technician.
Wow.
So, it was a hell of a transition because I had to learn how to be the owner while still being the only real like heavy duty technician out there. So I had to learn how to hire. I had to learn how to, I mean, it was nonstop, for the first year. I had to, I realized after 6 months that there was no way that I was going to do this on my own. Like I did not know what I was doing. Like fixing cars is easy, but understanding the back end, how do you price? What should your labor rate be? What should your markups be? How should you do those? Why?
Yeah.
Like why? I don't understand. So I hired ATI, and they helped me understand that why, what should the numbers be, and not just because, but in a calculated manner that is uh, that's just based off of numbers. Like this isn't about what I think or feel or what the other shops do or whatever. It's like, what do I want to pay my guys, and then what do I need to make in order to be successful? And they just gave me the formulas. I like ATI. There's some other things that I think they've kind of gotten a little bloated, and so I have issues with ATI, but they have absolutely helped me to a point that I couldn't necessarily repay them. I mean, it was $100,000. So there's no way around the fact that it was obscenely expensive. But without it, I don't think I would have survived. So I
Okay.
think it was worth every penny in that regard. So, and yeah, since then, the ATE thing has always been training has been grilled into me since I was just in the industry, realizing once I had my ASE master certification at 20 years old, I mean, I didn't have any real experience. I just learned how to take tests and learned information and put it in my brain. And, I have like pretty much everybody in this industry, I have ADD, like has been diagnosed since junior high school. I have a medicine that I have to take every day to be able to focus. But what's nice about it is I can hyper focus on the things I want to, like in a way that a lot of people can't. Like I can just zoom in on one thing and just drill it until it's just perfect. So, what makes a good technician is that I can just go timing belt and I'm in there and I'm doing timing belt and then nothing else is in my world and I can just do it. So same thing works luckily with the business aspect is okay, finances, taxes, whatever that one area is, SOP. I wrote all of our SOP. We have a lot now. And, now I can use chat to kind of help me get the backbone of the SOP started. But initially, I just wrote everything from top to bottom, all from scratch. And it was, I wanted to learn how to make a business that I didn't have to be in. Once I realized from the beginning that I was doing a vast majority of all of the tasks and showing up early to vacuum and doing like, I mean, everything. There's so much more to owning a business than just fixing cars and talking to people. I mean, what about who's going to stock the inventory? You have to check every single day. Like with us here, we live in the middle of nowhere. So I can't just be like, let me get parts from Parts House. Like I have to have everything either here or I have to bring it in a 12-hour kind of a time scale. So
Right.
we don't have that luxury. I mean, and I'm too picky to just use like Napa and AutoZone parts the majority of the time. I like to use Worldpac. I like to use OE parts. Again, so that's where the matrix kind of came in and how do we structure this business to work the way I want it to and to be able to offer the warranty that I want to. So we have a 4-year, 48,000-mile warranty on pretty much everything that we do. I mean, there's caveats, obviously, you have to,
Sure.
but yeah, I've even thought about increasing it again, because parts don't really fail. You know what I mean? If you do it right, I mean, they'll be 8 years or so, 10 years before I mean, look at the originals, you know what I mean? Like, unless there's an issue with manufacturing or some sort of defect or commonality or whatever, they just don't really fail anymore. So if you use the same parts, your Aisin, your Sankey 3.5 and all that, there's not really an issue. So I mean, I've even thought about jumping it to 7 years, just to be able to say that it is. And it's not like I mean, I stand behind everything. And we charge enough to compensate for the warranties. So if you think about this is one of they call it reducing it to the ridiculous is a concept that I've heard a couple of times. And if you think about how much money you spend in warranties a year, say it's 50 grand. It isn't, but let's just say that it is, right? So to put it at a number, and then you divide that by how many cars you work on, how many hours per RO you have, then you can figure out if I wanted to get an extra 50 grand a year, how much money would I need per car or per hour in order to come up with that amount of money. And then you just add $4 or whatever to your labor rate, and then you jump your warranty to 5 years. You know what I mean? Like it's not that complicated, but it is, well, it's the things that seem complicated can often be relatively simple. I mean, you can only do that so many times, right? So when it comes to the warranties, when it comes to your tech pay, but it's all about the numbers. What do you pay and what are your costs and what does your margin need to be? And then how do you work on your efficiency with your techs in order to get that uh, to get the efficiency where it needs to be in order for your effective labor rate to be correct, because you can say you're charging 150, whatever, $200 an hour, but if your effective labor rate isn't that, then it doesn't really matter what you say you're charging, because if you look at the hours that you're actually selling and how much you sell labor wise, that's what tells you what your real labor rate is, your effective. I didn't know anything about any of this. I mean, I had no clue about any of this. This is all the kind of stuff I've learned from classes with Nawaka, which is what brought me to ATE, the Northwest Auto Care Alliance. We
Mhm.
were part of them as well before I bought the shop, and I was going to all the ownership meetings with the owner. So, I had this, desire or plan. I didn't exactly know how I was going to accomplish it, but plan to be the owner for a long time. I just had a lot of faith, and I guess that's the biggest thing that's kind of kept me going this whole time. I mean, through the back surgery and the pain for 5 years. I mean, my kids thought that I didn't even want to spend time with them, because they're like, Dad, you never want to do anything. I'm like, you have no idea how how much I want to do. But I mean, I'm in so much pain all the time that I can't sit in a car and drive you guys to Silverwood. I won't be able to go to work, so like I only had the energy to exercise, get my back and all that straight and stretched. I had to do planking exercises. I had to do all this. It was like an hour and a half every night just to be
Wow.
able to go back to work the next day and hurt it again, and then go back that night and do the exercises and stretches and then do that. And it was, I mean, the weekends were miserable because the only thing that kept the pain away was moving. So if I didn't move, I was in pain all the time for 5 years. I mean, I was about ready to just call it because, man, it was unbearable. So, which is where I went to the surgery, and then that's what pushed me after I got the surgery over with and the recovery. I had gained 80+% of who I was before I hurt my back. So it's like, man, I got my life back, and then I wanted to go. I wanted to create the shop. That, I guess, what you had to get to your original question was just, like, why do I do what I do? Why did I go from being a technician that could work anywhere and make 150 grand or whatever a year to owning the shop? Well, the reason is that I wanted to create the shop that I could never work in, and I wanted to be the boss that I never had. I've had a lot of bosses that were, just self-centered, and a lot of guys get into this for themselves, and I don't really, I mean, it's not my motivation. I mean, just like with the money that we make, I mean, we fix people's cars, we help people. That's what we do. The Simon Sinek's know your why. I do what I do because I love helping people, not just the customers, but the technicians. Like there's technicians like me that are out there that are in jobs they don't love, in shops that they don't love. And I wanted to be that, or to create that respite, for those people to be able to come to a place with a good culture, with a boss who actually cares genuinely, doesn't just say it, but actually genuinely does, creates compensation plans, or at least able to adjust comp plans to incentivize what what we really want to accomplish, not just here you go hourly, here you go flat rate, but I have an amalgam of ways of trying to, get them the pay that they deserve and the shop and me, the money that I need. I mean, it's a win-win situation. That's what I always try to accomplish in every role. It's, win-win-win, I guess is the way so the guest wins, I win, and the technician wins. So, that's I'm always looking for ways to increase efficiency, to increase uh, just the comfort level of the people that work here in as much as you can be. I mean, like the heaters and the doors and having electric door openers and having snacks for the guys to eat. And if they have any feedback on how should we do our like our shipping and receiving, I've revamped the entire shipping and receiving area to make it more efficient for the writers and the technicians. And how do we SOP? Like, how do we do our special order parts? And how do we do our processes inside the shop in order to have a unified front as to how we all focus and how do we do the job, rather than this tech does it this way and this tech does it that way and this writer writes it this way and this writer writes it that way. Like that doesn't work. So you have to have, you just have to have a unified front. And then there has to be someone who will lead that in a way that is effective. And so, I mean, I've been in these books, Extreme Ownership, The Dichotomy of Leadership, the E-Myth Revisited, Good to Great, Know Your Why. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I realized very early on that I don't know anything about this. Yeah, I can fix cars and I can take things apart and I can understand complex, uh, you know, things like that. But I've tried to use that to do the business side. So to understand the complexity of the business, to disassemble the business into its integral parts and to polish them and then put them back together in a way that works better. But it's not easy. And then you have the human aspect, that is, I mean, you end up becoming a psychologist. I mean, so I've had to read books on psychology as well. So, it's just a never ending learning process. And like being a technician, it's the same. That's my motivation. One of them also is that I just get to always learn new stuff. And I like learning new things. I like that uncomfortable process of learning new things. I've gotten comfortable in it. So I guess that's one of the things that maybe has made me able to do this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the smartest things I hear is, you accepted the fact that, hey, I don't know, I need to learn. So, we always say the smartest people in our society are scientists, and scientists are always the ones that are saying, well, I don't know, let's look into it, you know? So, and then you have those people that say they know everything and they don't know anything. So, and I've talked with several other shop owners that, hey, I was in the business for 20 years. And then I got with the Institute for Excellence, a coaching company that's one of
Yeah.
you recommend, by the way, Cecil Bullard. And
Yeah. I just had one of his classes this weekend.
oh, okay, yeah, Cecil's great.
Yeah.
That's who we
And
recommend.
Kent is his son. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yep, yeah. They don't live. They only live 5 minutes from me.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So,
that I think they're who I'm going to go with after the whole ATI thing is done. I think the Institute is definitely going to be uh my next consultant. I
mhm.
absolutely believe that that's I mean, I love Kent's classes. I haven't had very much from Cecil himself. I think he's kind of trying to do what I'm doing and trying to kind of
He
back
is.
out.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been at it 25 years, so he's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's what he's trying to do. But you were smart enough to say, because I just had a podcast not last week or the week before, someone 20 plus years that got with the coaching company and then just said, gee, I didn't know what I didn't know. So that's probably one of the best things that we could get out to other shop owners that have been at it for a long time, but they really aren't getting any outside feedback from. And it's every shop that I've seen that gets with a good coaching company are those are the ones that are growing. They have a good digital marketing agency, and they have a good coaching company, and they have a good culture. Speaking of culture, one of the biggest issues with auto repair shops is finding, hiring, and retaining good technicians. You got any advice for other shop owners out there on that process?
Yeah. So there's a book called Extreme Ownership that I would read before even thinking about this subject.
Extreme ownership. Okay.
Yep, by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. It's I mean, that one kind of goes along with the second book that's called The Dichotomy of Leadership. I mean, you'll end up finding them both together usually, but
Okay.
extreme ownership is you have to really kind of embrace that concept first, is recognizing that everything is your responsibility. So when it comes to the culture in the shop and that being paramount, that's a difficult pill to swallow because you need to make the numbers you need to make and you need to do the production you need to do. And that won't last very long, if you don't have a culture where people, want to be in. And I had to learn this the hard way because in the beginning I thought, well, why wouldn't I just hire the best guys that I could find that can produce the most work and turn the best results? Because obviously, wouldn't that be the case, right?
Right.
And I quickly realized that some of those guys that are out there that are, like the top of the top technicians that can diagnose anything and can, they tend to come with a personality that is toxic or abrasive or narcissistic. I mean, there's a lot of that. So because they know they're the best, so it's all about them. And, I was fortunate enough, I don't know if it was the military or whatever, but to be one of those technicians, but also not self-sacrificing. I mean, I made $29 an hour when I bought this place, when there was other people making 40. I wasn't a really great advocate for myself, even though I was extremely valuable and didn't even realize it. Trying to find someone to replace myself, I realized how crazy it was that I wasn't making 120 plus $1,000 a year, as the technician I was when I bought this place. So that was one of my kind of oh my God moments that, if I'm going to do this, I have to find a way to pay those technicians what they're worth, like what I was worth and didn't get paid. So, but at the same time, go back to the culture thing, I have had a service advisor that was probably one of the best service advisors I've ever had. He could talk to anybody, he could explain things to people in a way that just made a ton of sense, and he could turn the numbers, he could get the sales, he could get people to understand, and but he was terrible when it came to the technicians and the other advisors. He was a backbiter and he was kind of going around behind other people and trying to talk about them and get them to look bad in the owner's eyes. And there was just a lot of that nastiness, where it was passive aggression. And yeah, it just made me sick, like, cause I loved the results, but it just was unhealthy. And then I was going to lose the people that, are more type S personalities, in the DISC assessment. There are a lot more people, and wanting to help and wanting to support. But they weren't going to say anything necessarily about the situation, but they'll just burn inside with this just toxic culture. So I had to fire him. Like I didn't have to fire him, but I knew that if I was going to keep the people that I wanted to work with and the people that, that I knew loved my customers and my business, I would have to fire the people that really produced like crazy, but were trying to destroy my business from the inside. So I ended up having to write service myself for like 5 months before I was able to find another advisor. But again, it all kind of goes back to that faith element, So I mean, I am a big believer that the only way that I'm able to do this is with God's help. I mean, there's just no way I could do this on my own. I couldn't handle the stress. I couldn't handle the instability, the insecurity, the just not knowing what's coming. There's just, and that's kind of what got me through Afghanistan was realize I was never raised in church. I never had any kind of anything like that. I realized when I was driving down the roads in Afghanistan that if I were to just blow up, which happens all the time, like what is going to happen to me? I mean, is it just lights out, my world, everything is over for nothing? Really? I mean, is that why we're here? So I had to really kind of think about that when I was 19 years old and kind of come to a realization of, well, what am I going to believe and what is out there to, that's where that whole kicking off the learning started. Reading the Bible, started asking questions to everybody that was around me, trying to get the answer that I needed. And I'm still learning. It's not like I don't know the answer to anything, but I do believe that we are a lot more complicated and a lot more specifically designed than just some pure happenstance. And there's just been too many times where I've specifically asked, for guidance and clarity and help, and just having humility and recognizing that I'm not the one who's in control of everything. I can't make people show up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, no matter what kind of marketing and how much control I try to have, I mean, it all really still boils down to it's not me. So, if it's not me, then who? And if I just, like, again, it's the God will provide. When my guys are freaked out and when we're slow, it's like the Lord will provide. He will, or he won't. And I mean, it's like he always has.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and that's been a big part of what's kept me going. Instead of quitting and selling the business or whatever, it's just I am convinced that we'll be okay. So,
A strong faith is one of the things that I see in a lot of successful people in all walks of life, not just auto repair shops, no matter what it is.
mhm.
So, hey, you mentioned data. So, no shop is going to be successful without managing finance as well. Any advice on how you've learned to manage your finances and grow your shop? Because you went from a technician. Well, guess what? A shop owner, if a shop owner is not handling finances correctly, they don't stay a shop owner for very long. So,
Yep.
and ASC techs don't handle finances. So, you really had to make that shift. And what have you found to be successful for you?
So I found that, um, like anybody that does something, they don't do everything else. You know what I mean? Like you don't plumb and you don't roof and you don't plaster or whatever, like, so I outsource the things that I can't do. So when it comes to that specifically, I have a bookkeeper that I mean, I spend a lot of money making sure that that part of it is good because I recognize that my shortcomings are what they are. And if I try to ignore what they are, then that's just going to make me fail. So I've I've gotten people on my side and paid them well so that I don't have to worry about that and I let them worry about it. So it's not like it's not abdication. That's one thing to, that they explain in some of these books that you'll read. It's a genuine delegation. But that then delegation requires oversight. So that is what I do, is that I'm looking through P&Ls. I'm looking at savings accounts, checking accounts, what are we spending our money on? What kind of budget should we have? But the day to day is not under my purview at all, because I just, there's no way. I mean, it's too much. I mean, it's a full-time job. So,
Mhm.
um, I have a bookkeeper that I've found. I've gone through four bookkeepers, so I'm not going to say it's easy. It is very hard. And all the bookkeepers that I've had, except for the one that I have right now, have been terrible. So, like the getting in with like a BNI or something like that might be helpful. So a lot of the CPAs will do bookkeeping as well. I mean, they're going to do like the once a week type bookkeeping, but I'm way too type A for that. Like I really need to see every single transaction exactly where it needs to be as soon as it shows up. Not, like we'll do this once a month. I mean, it's just like conflict. You know what I mean? Like finances, I look at it like conflict. Is that conflict avoided is conflict magnified. If you have any part of your life that has conflict, you need to attack it in love. That's the, like in a way that is not like angry or fearful or anything. It's just because I care, I need to fix this problem. Not I care more about my own comfort, so I'm going to ignore this problem.
Mhm.
The same thing with finances is that I have a woman who is just fantastic. And I created a position for her so that way she can do the day-to-day bookkeeping. And instead of just that, because I mean, that part on its own isn't really a full-time job. You know what I mean? Like that, it's hard to just pay someone to just sit around and just that. So I've merged a couple other roles together at the same time. So she does my inventory management, and she does the bookkeeping, and she actually drives around shuttle for my guys. So she has a full-time position where she never has to stop, really. I mean, she has enough responsibility that she can just be on salary, and she makes more money than she ever has, and she gets to do things that are, just in the
Right.
head. You know what I mean? It's not like there's a lot of physical labor
Sure.
involved. And she does, like, when I say, hey, I need you to get a hold of the CPA, or hey, can you order these things from Amazon? Or, you know what I mean? Like all of those logistical things that I just don't necessarily have time for. I delegate those to her, and then she takes care of it. But you got to find the person who cares enough to do it like you would do it as much as possible. I mean, like they're never going to do it like you would do it. And you have to swallow that pill to some extent. You have to be okay with failure and find a person. If I were to just give like one piece of advice, and this is really difficult because it's almost impossible to find, is to instill, because you're not going to find it, but you're going to have to instill a culture of responsibility and ownership, which is where that extreme ownership kind of comes in. So if I, as an owner, are deflecting or like not accepting responsibility, then that's what everyone else is going to do. So if you were saying, this is your fault, you did this wrong, like if everything is not your fault as the owner, leader, husband, father, it doesn't really matter, right? But if you're the one who's supposed to be the one who's leading and you're not taking responsibility or accountability for anything, you're pushing it off on everyone else. What do you think everyone else is going to do? Right? They're all going to do the same thing because they're following your lead. That's what you're telling them to do. So it was as soon as I started doing this, it was like a freaking light bulb, and everything started falling into place. At home, here, it's like, no, everything's my fault. Ultimately, everything's your responsibility as the owner, so everything's your fault. And what's great about that is that once you realize that everything's your fault, you're the one that can fix everything. So, like if it's instead of saying, you did this thing wrong. It's more, I haven't taught you how to do it right. I didn't put the system in place for you not to fail at doing this. Like where my guys had a garage door opener, and the garage door opener was there was no standard practice as to what we did with this thing. So they would take the garage door opener whenever, and they would take it on test drives, and then it would just disappear. And I'm like, I can't have the garage door opener disappearing, because then someone can just walk by, click if they find this thing, and then just get into the shop whenever they feel like it. So that cannot happen. So, the guy that lost it, wouldn't admit it. I wouldn't be, it couldn't have been. I put it away. And I'm like, well, there was no away. Again, my fault. I didn't have any SOP. Where do you put the damn garage door opener when you're done using it? Like things that you would think but they're not obvious. You didn't talk about it. It's not obvious. So as soon as I told him, I was like, no, it's my fault that you lost the garage door opener because I didn't have a system in place to make sure it wouldn't get lost. And then immediately, what do you think he said? What do you think he said?
I don't know what do you say.
So he said, no, it's my fault.
Oh,
Right.
then he admits it,
Instead
right.
of,
As soon as
yeah, well,
you, as soon as you
as
admit
soon as
it's my
I
fault because I didn't have it
accepted
in place,
responsibility,
right?
well, it
Then
just
he
like, so
accepted responsibility. Yeah, great
So just
example.
like if you had an argument with your wife or with your kids or whatever, and then instead of continuing, now you did this, now it's your fault, blah, blah, and you went, you know what? No, 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 it's my fault. I'm sorry. I mean, what do you think is the first thing that the other person is going to do if they're not just a complete terrible human being? Right?
Right.
I mean,
Admit
right? They're
it's
going to reciprocate in your leadership. They're going to say, no, 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 it's my fault too, or whatever, right? I mean, it's not just going to be, ha, I told you it was your fault. Bye. Right? Like
right.
they're going to be, all right, no, so you instead of continuing this whole everything is mirror shield, nothing is my fault, everything is everyone else's fault, nothing ever works, the culture is terrible. It's no, it's my fault. And then they say, no, it's my fault. And then we say, okay, well, cool. Then how do we fix because who cares? What matters is how do we fix the problem? So we came up with a system now to where they have the garage door opener hanging in an area that I can see it on the cameras. So that way now it's always there, or you can see who took it. That way you know exactly who had it and that they didn't put it back in the place where I can see in the cameras. So I have we can go over the camera system later. That's complicated, but um, that way they know exactly what they need to do. You hit the button, you take your remote, you leave, you click the clicker as you drive off, you come back in, you click it, you drive in, you put the thing away, and it goes where it goes. So that way I can see when did it disappear because I have 60 days worth of footage in the cameras and I can see exactly what happens. So if we do lose something, if something gets broken, if something gets, scratched or whatever, I can see all of it. And then it's accountability for everybody and it's security for us. And we've had customers come in and say, you broke my side mirror. And I had to go back through the cameras and show them they dropped it off with a broken side mirror. And then it's, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And that saved me thousands, tens of thousands of dollars so far in just claims of people saying that I broke their cars when we didn't. Um, Side subject. But yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the accountability is the biggest thing is getting, you're not going to find people who are going to come to your shop and be accountable. They're not going to say, hey boss, this is my fault. This is where I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. You're never going to find that. They're going to say excuses, excuses, elbows, like wham, everything is just not my fault because, like everywhere I've ever worked, anytime anything happens, you berate the person who made the mistake and you disincentivize them from owning what they've done. You just smash them as soon as they make a mistake instead of, okay, well, that's fine. I actually encourage my people to make mistakes. I want them to make mistakes. If they don't, then I know they're not trying hard enough and pushing themselves hard enough to where they're in that zone where they can make a mistake. If they never make any mistakes, that means they're pulled so far back, to the trunk of the tree, to the standard practice that they'll never grow. They'll only do what they know is safe, and then everything just stays stagnant. But if they reach out on the branch far enough to where they could fall off, then that's where they're going to make the mistakes. That's the only way that they can grow, so I tell my people, I'll never fire you for making a mistake, but I will fire you for not making any mistakes. Right. So that kind of forces that culture of growth. I want to see you continually improve and I want to see you own your mistake, just own it. And then we can move on. Hey, I broke this headlight. Hey, I messed up this thing. Hey, I didn't know how to do this, instead of nothing's ever my fault and it was excuses, excuses. Like I just have no time for that. And I let people know right off the bat, like I'm not going to fire you, right? Even if you blow up an engine, why would I fire you for blowing up an engine? Like you made a mistake. It's not, I mean, if we're talking negligence, okay, we can get into that. But if you hire the right people, have the right culture, people who are passionate and care about what they do and really genuinely want to do this, and they make a mistake, so be it. Whatever. I've blown up and broken hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff in my time as a technician. I mean, holy cow, I can't even believe that people hadn't fired me. Because I mean, I blew up an engine, I blew up a transfer case, I destroyed a transmission. I forgot I put in drive shafts wrong. I've done brakes completely wrong and had wheels get ripped to shreds. Like I've had calipers come off. I've done everything you could probably do wrong. So like who am I to say that no one can make any mistakes? I owe the industry a lot of money in mistakes. So, I am totally okay with my guys making mistakes. They make me money every other day of the year, except for the day that they make a mistake. So
Sure.
be it.
Yep. So we implemented mistake sheets last year. So each department has a mistake sheet, SEO, web team, social media, and they've written down all the mistakes that they can think of that has been made in the past. And then when we hire somebody, they have to read over the mistake sheet and sign off that they've read it and understand the mistakes that have been made by previous staff members.
Mhm.
And then there's a monthly review where everybody has to take a look at it so they can keep it top of mind. And mistakes have dropped by over 90%. So just thought I'd toss
Well,
that.
because the likelihood is, the mistakes will probably be the same. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
they are.
reasons that they get made. It's
Yeah.
because they're not as clear.
Yeah,
That's
you hire
good.
a web developer, they'll make the same mistakes that other web developers made in the past unless we have
Yep.
a system for them to follow and a mistake sheet. Hey, here's the
Mhm.
mistakes that made in the past. read them. Do you understand them all? Yep. Okay, great. Sign off on it that you understand them, and then we meet once a week. So, Steve, I really want to thank you for your time today. You've given incredible insight into not only how to run a shop, but how to lead and manage a team and even live a good life by focusing on faith. So I really appreciate your time very much today, and wish you much success with 6-Star Automotive.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
For additional automotive resources and exclusive content, follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all our episodes. Thanks again for joining us in the driver's seat, and we'll see you next time for another thrilling episode of Top Shop.